Welcome back, authors. So far in my story, we have covered the ways people can abuse without bruising directly to us. Yet they are not the only ways these abuses happen. Often we become our own abuser. We adapt behaviors. We do so hoping it will bring kindness from abusive people. Expectations get set for us to uphold. When expectations are not met, we face horrible consequences. The abuse trains and teaches us to doubt our instincts. Instinct to defend the self turns into compliance with our abuse. Today, our story takes us deeper into the despair of abuses without bruises in my life. We have to begin with the framework supporting my abuse, the standards that would rule over my life for 3 years. Mom had given Steve free rein to punish us kids as he saw fit. When last we spoke, I learned that first day, my punishment didn't need a justification to happen. I knew I was at the mercy of a sadist. I knew he was capable of killing my family and expressed he had no problems doing so if it would terrorize me. It may seem like I would be the only victim in such a system, but it turned my entire family into hostages to the whims of Steve. They all saw how viciously I was abused in my punishments. They all feared for me. Still, they feared death punishments, turning onto them more. It kept my family silent in the face of my abuse. They started gaslighting to keep me from seeking justice for my mistreatment. He had created a system where the enslaved policed themselves. By the end of the first week, Steve had all of us living in fear of his judgment of our actions and the punishments they would bring. We became sheep, looking to please the shepherd, so he would not cook us over his campfire that night. His first initiative was to establish the new law of the land within the home. New rules were set to manage as children's freedoms at home. Mum's room was entirely off limits to us kids now. No matter what, including waking in the night, terrified from a nightmare. When we answered the phone, it was to be for his business. At 9 years old, I learned over the phone customer service. I learned how to take messages and schedules for a business. I can still remember what we said. Steve's appliance repair service. How may I help you today? His next rule was that us children could not have TV time unless it was pre-approved by Steve. We had to earn the privilege through our behavior. Other areas Steve enforced new guidelines were laundry, cleaning, eating, even things like what music we were allowed to listen to, what toys we were allowed to play with, appropriate playmates. Chores and our obligations to the house to earn our keep became subject to Steve's approval. We no longer had freedom to choose who, what, where, when, or how we got to be present in our own home. I went from never thinking about what I could eat for a meal to wondering if I would get one that day. I might have upset Steve unknowingly, causing him to make my hunger his enjoyment. We will dive deeper into this subject later in the chapter. Mum's busy schedule kept her gone most of the time, leaving Steve entirely free to do as he wished with us kids. As I said, it took a full week to get the fear installed into each and every one of us as to what we had to face should we displease him. Until that point, there was a solidarity between us siblings to attempt to stop Steve from taking over. I know now how futile it was for small children to think they could defeat a 32-year-old man. A man with no qualms about harming others to take what he wanted. A man who seemingly wanted to cause harm for pleasure. In those moments, we just wanted to fight for our safety. Ironically, safety became the guise through which our abuse was sealed in. His tyranny began when Steve told Mom how concerned he was about the safety of his belongings. He claimed us kids were irresponsible. He said someone could have taken our house keys and copied them. It all added up to us children, no longer having keys to access our home. He changed every single external lock on the house, adding deadbolts to every door and one to his and Mum's bedroom. The next thing was the TV. Steve bought an electric circuit lock, one that a key was needed to complete the circuitry to turn a TV. I didn't even know that such a lock existed until then. I could not think of why something like that would be needed, except to punish children like me. After the TV lock, Steve installed the locks on the food cupboards. He explained to Mom that us kids were eating her out of her paychecks, and he would be in charge of when the food got distributed. The next lock went onto the refrigerator to further his absolute control of our food supply. He also bought a safe with a turn-dial lock and multiple lock boxes to store his money and find things. The key ring, after he finished, weighed his pants down on the side with the pocket he placed them. That made me laugh a bit, because he had no ass, and it gave him a crooked plumber's crack. It never failed to make me giggle on the inside. His hairy ass crack, so maggoty, pasty white, making his tough guy persona seem so obviously fake. School began at the end of that week. It was the first time we would be going to school and not have a key to get into our home afterwards. Steve assured Mom that he would be there to let us in, but he was not there. Us kids spent an hour wandering around our home, trying to find an open door or window to gain access. Everywhere we tried, we were met with locks. We still kept trying, going over the accesses once more, examining each one closely to see if we could find a way past the locks. When I got to the window that all those years before had allowed my stench to fill the house, I saw the opportunity to get inside. They were old wooden windows with the half-moon brass latch locks. Steve had not replaced the window locks. I saw there was a gap just big enough for my ruler to slip between the frames and disengage the mechanism. The window was open. My sister began to cheer and jump with excitement, and my brother began to cry with relief. He was in first grade and needed to go poop. We had outsmarted the villain. Just as we were going to climb into the house, we could hear Steve's truck coming down the road. We all instantly became afraid of being caught. Me more than the others, because I had thrown my book bag into the house just before we realized he was coming. I knew I was caught, and so did my siblings. My sister and I locked eyes for a second, before she grabbed our brother's hand and ran towards the back of the house with him, to pretend they had been playing on the swing set the whole time. I watched as they abandoned me to the wrath of Steve alone. He pulled into the driveway and went straight into the home, using his big key ring, full of keys. It took him very little time to discover the open window. I made my way to the front porch, and was sitting waiting for my punishment. It took Steve almost 10 minutes to get me. He chose to go out back first, through the basement doors, to bring my brother and sister in to witness my punishment. Steve always loved having an audience to witness the abuses he caused. He loved to have the witnesses partake in the abuse, but that comes more into play as the story progresses. When he did drag me into the house to punish me, I saw my siblings sitting on the couch with snacks, looking terrified that I was going to take them down with me. Steve shoved me to my knees by the window, pushing my face down into my book bag. "Is this yours?" he yelled. "Yes," I said back in a strained voice. Yes, what? He whispered menacingly in my ear. I knew by his tone what he expected. I was to call him my master again. It made me sick to my stomach. I wanted to scream and shout, fighting with all my might for my dignity. I tried to lift myself from the force of his hand holding me down. Alas, a 9-year-old girl could not overpower a 32-year-old man. I had silent tears running down my face. There was no way out. I gave in. Yes, master, I said as I slumped, allowing the force of his hand tapping me to the floor. He smiled with glee. He always got very happy every time he broke me. It was his daily addiction for 3 years. Steve did not drink or do drugs. He smoked cigarettes, but beyond that, he was a straight arrow kind of guy. The only thing I ever saw him find irresistible was torturing me or others, but me the most. I was his drug of choice. Pick up your shit and follow me, Steve commanded. I did as I was told, looking at my siblings out of the corner of my eye, wondering if they were okay. They were both wide-eyed and scared. He took a moment to praise them for not being like me, and as he was dragging me off to my room, I saw the relief wash over their faces. They were safe. I gained a little more resolve. For my predicament when I saw they were okay, as well as a spark of defiance. Steve sentenced me to writing sentences, 1,000 of them stating, I will not break into the house through the window and I will wait for Steve to get home before I get to go into the house. Thousands of sentences was Steve's favorite punishment for me. He would always make them ridiculously long and arrogant. My mum ended up fearing his wrath so much, she saved every single sentence I wrote, reams and notebooks of paper, filled entirely on both sides with sentences. They took up an entire drawer of her filing cabinet for nearly 30 years. She gave them to me in my 40s, after Steve died of cancer several states away, after decades of us never seeing him. I asked her why she had kept them. In a sheepish voice, she said, you know what he was like. I wanted to make sure you had them to prove to him you did not need to be punished anymore. Authors, the abuses that do not bruise, can leave wounds. We carry for decades, due to training, to fear punishment from the abusers. Our choices to walk on eggshells, to minimize the harm we will face, becomes our main focus of self-improvements. We aim to please the violators, to attempt avoiding the violations. We become self-policing to reinforce our abusers' hold on us. To the rest of the world, the abuser's reputation outshines what is improper to speak of outside of the home. We become prisoners of our own desires to survive. Red words in our stories like this often keep us blind to our self-worth. We didn't deserve being an object someone else chose to manipulate and torture. Those who did it made those choices for us without our consent. Replacing these red words is always a long, hard road. Many of them feel like a brand we wear every day for the world to see and judge us by. No worries, authors. Editing can be tedious after all, but it is genuinely worth the effort in the end. The edited version of the story is stronger than the original. Often you will find that you had purple words in your story that you had not even known about. In this story, I learned how to pick locks with an amazing efficiency for someone 9 years old, as well as have beautiful penmanship. Our acts of defiance in the face of oppression instantly corrects red words into purple words. Our evolution into purple words brings empowerment of self as well as forgiveness of self. Abusers do not need your forgiveness. You were not responsible for your abuse. You are also not responsible for their choices to abuse you. Authors, You have no obligations to forgive anyone for your abuse. I hope you have all found a red word or two in your stories this time, authors. It is one of the more nefarious types of abuse that does not bruise, because it does not end when the abuser leaves. Cheers to ending the abuse you did not even realize you have been doing to yourself, authors. Here's to the peace you can find when you find your pieces of self again.